welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all doing well. This series is gonna be a beginner series for those of you who are just getting into horses and want to know more. I'm gonna go step by step, starting with how much it's gonna cost you to own a horse. This is the first step, finding out how much it's gonna cost and if you're gonna be able to afford it. Most of these are gonna be estimates, but I'm also gonna show you guys how to find out how much these things are gonna cost, because I could just tell you how much it's gonna cost, but it's different in every single state and every city. The first cost and the first thing you're gonna want to find when you're looking to buy a horse is your boarding facility. Hey guys, so I'm currently at Starbucks doing this voiceover and it is crazy loud in here. Hopefully you can hear me. I just wanted to mention that the first part of this video is all about boarding facilities. I talk about all the different kinds of boarding options and the different prices. I also give you guys some tips on how to find one and what to look out for. So if you haven't watched part 1, I definitely suggest you watch that one first and then come back to this one. I'm gonna leave the link to that video in my description box. Okay, let's get back to the video. Now we have to pay for our own grain, hay, and shavings. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you an estimate on how much that's gonna cost. So in my area, a bale of O&A costs $15.95, almost $16. And it does range. Sometimes the prices go up, sometimes they go down. Now there's a bunch of different kinds of hay, and the price isn't the same for each one. You have to call your feed store and find out. O&A, TNA, alfalfa, Timothy, peanut hay, there's so many different kinds. So you just have to do your research and find out what you want to feed your horse. God, my nose is so itchy. What is going on? These dogs are shedding, so I feel hair everywhere. But yeah, so a bale of hay here of O&A, it's like $16. Now it's totally different in every single state. Like this might be crazy expensive to some people. They might get it cheaper because depending on where you are, the hay is trailered over to you, over to that location. Like if your area doesn't grow O&A, then it has to be brought from a different state, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive. Maybe this kind of hay is grown in your area, so that kind of hay is going to be cheaper. So it just depends. Like I said, go on Google and you search feed stores in your area and you can go ahead and call, say what do you have available, and then go from there. But just to add up the total, let's say we're going to do $16 a bale and we're going to do 2 bales a week because now we're feeding our own horses, right? So that's going to be, I suck at math, I'll do the math later and add it up here. But yeah, so that's their hay. But if you do feed your horse grain, you also have to add that up. And for a performance grain here in my area, goes for like $22.50. And when I was in South Florida, I was feeding grain, and I think a bag lasted a week for one horse, for Crystal. I think, I don't remember exactly, but let's just do 1 bag. So now 2 bales and 1 bag of grain lasts a week for one horse. Now this is just a rough estimate. It all depends. If your horse is a hard keeper, you're gonna have to feed more. So 2 bales might not last 2 weeks. You might need 3. It all just depends, but this is just an estimate. Now you also have to buy shavings, right? Because now your boarding facility, you're doing a partial board, so they don't supply feed, grain, or shavings, so you have to buy your own shavings. Now a bag of shavings here, fine shavings, is like $6, and depending on the size of the stall and if your horse is stalled 24/7, you're gonna need a lot of shavings. To be honest, I don't know how much shavings last per week because I mostly try to keep my horse in a pasture, so I'm not really too sure how long shavings last in a stall. I don't know, let's say 2 bags of shavings fill your stall up perfectly. Let's say 2 bags a week. Is that good? You guys have to let me know. I don't even know. 2 bags a week? This is if you're keeping them in a stall. Now if you're keeping them in a pasture, it all depends. If the grass is really good where you live, then you might not have to spend that much on hay. Probably save a lot in the summer, and you'd only have to buy hay in the winter. You don't need shavings if you're in a pasture. So all those things you should take into account. I love pasture boarding, so that's always my number 1. But this is how much it's gonna cost for the board and the food and the shavings. Now another monthly expense is the farrier. Now the farrier comes around maybe like between 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how fast your horse's hooves grow. If your horse's hooves are pretty good, if they're usually pretty bad, if they need more work, then you can do every 4 weeks, but it just depends. Now we only trim the horses, so for us personally, our farrier charges us $30 per horse, but again, it all depends on your area. We have a lot of horses, so we don't get charged a trip fee. Some farriers charge for the drive, and it's usually called a trip fee, but if there's a specific farrier that your barn uses, you probably won't have to pay that if you use the farrier that does everyone else in your barn. You know what I mean? But if you have a specific farrier that you love and he only has to come to your barn just for you, then you probably do have to consider that trip fee. And I honestly don't know how much it would be. I think maybe like $5 or $10. I don't know how much the trip fee, but yeah, for us, Trimming is like 30 bucks and we usually do it every 6 weeks. But again, it depends on your horse. If your horse maybe needs correcting in his feet or anything like that, then you might have to do it a little bit more often. Now that's for trimming. Now if your horse needs shoes, the price is a lot more depending on the kinds of shoes you get and how often you need to change them. Usually shoes go for like 120 here. Again, we don't shoe our horses, but I think it's like 120 and the most expensive like 180. But it all depends again in your area, in your farrier. You can ask your boarding facility or through Facebook. Facebook, guys, I'm telling you, Facebook. You just go on there, and if you're new to the area or something, find the equestrian group on Facebook. Some of the groups, you're not allowed to write anything besides what they're promoting. So if it's just a boarding place, like you saw that one group said only boarding ads, or if it's just a tack place, sometimes they say only tack, but sometimes they don't. And you can write, looking for a farrier in this area, who do you recommend? They'll start commenting who their farriers are, and they'll write reviews, and they'll tell you who they think is the best in that area, or blah blah blah. So that's the best way to find a farrier. And again, the bulletin board. You can go to the feed store. Sometimes farriers put up their ads, and you just call and see how much it would cost you to do your horse. Now we're gonna move on to your yearly expenses. The top thing would be your Coggins. A Coggins is this test that your horse takes every single year. You can't take your horse anywhere without a Coggins. The Coggins test checks for equine infectious anemia. This test is often needed to take your horse to a show or wherever you transport your horse across state lines. So if you want to go trail riding, or you want to go to a park or a barrel race or this or that, you have to have a Coggins, like a negative Coggins, which means that your horse came out negative for that disease. Like sometimes if you're just driving or something and you get stopped by the cops and you have horses, they'll ask you for the Coggins. You just have to make sure it's always negative. Usually it's always negative. So that's a test your horse has to take every single year. In this area, it's like 30 to 50 bucks, 30 to 35. And then if your vet has a trip fee, then maybe it would go a little bit higher, but usually it's in that kind of price range. Another yearly expense would be your horse's vaccines. Now some people don't vaccine their horses for everything. It's personal preference. If you want to take the risk, I mean, it's up to you. Usually during the vet check, your vet will recommend the shots for your horse, and I think these are yearly. I'm not too sure. Some people choose to just put some of them, some people put all of them, some people don't put any at all, or depending on your state, I think some might be mandatory. I'm not too sure. There are a couple more like vaccines than the ones I just listed, but these are kind of like the main ones. In their area, maybe there's like 3 of these that are very common, so people will get the vaccines for those, and then they won't get for the other ones. And if you are traveling a lot, if you go to a lot of horse shows where there's a lot of other horses, or rodeos or barrel races, bringing your horse to a bunch of different barns, you never know what those other horses might have. So maybe if you do that a lot, you might want to consider getting the shots. I mean, it's up to you. Do your own research, talk to your vet, and yeah. Now the vaccines, I'm not too sure how much they cost. Hold up, this is easier. Let me call my vet tech friend. Hello? ¿Cómo estás? I just called the wrong person. Hello? I'm like filming a video right now. You're on camera. How much does it cost to get all the vaccines for your horse? Give me an estimate. Hi, please give me like an estimate. And do people usually get all of them? West Nile. Yeah. Oh yeah. So like some people choose the ones that they want to do, right? Like depending on what's really common in your area, or some people like say, okay, I want the tetanus in this one, but I don't want this one in this one, you know, right? Okay. Okay, thank you, love you. Bye. I don't know how much of that phone call I'm gonna include, but the vaccine thing is very controversial. I mean, don't attack me, please. It just depends on what you want to do. There's like the West Nile one, which is contracted through mosquitoes. Just talk to your vet, do your research, and I think the average cost is like $60. Again, you have to find out how much it costs in your area, but yeah, that's the whole vaccine thing, and I think those are yearly, and then some of them you just need to get a booster. Now, the next thing is teeth. Your horse grinds their teeth a lot over the years, so they'll start to get sharp points, and for that you have to call your equine dentist out to file those down, especially if you're riding a lot. You don't want them to be in pain or anything like that. It's recommended once a year. It just depends on each horse. Some horses don't need it every year. They'll get their teeth done every 2 years. It just depends. Now, our dentist in our area charges 80 bucks to get the horse's teeth floated. Again, it depends on your area. It depends on your vet. If you get a trip fee, it all just depends. So I do recommend finding, again, a dentist in your area, and the best way is, again, through Facebook. Just type it in search of equine dentist, and then people will start writing their recommendations. You can go ahead and call each one one, see what the prices are. But here it's like 80 bucks a horse. Sorry guys, my camera died, so I had to switch to my vlog camera. So that's the dentist fee, and that's gonna be yearly or every 2 years depending on the horse. Another thing that's really important is the dewormer. You have to deworm your horses every 6 months, but you can find them at the feed store, at the tack store. You always want to change the dewormer. You don't want to use the same one each time because the worms start developing an immunity to it. So usually they'll sell like a pack with like different kinds of wormers, and then you'll go every 6 months to use a different one. You can also get a stool sample and send it out to your vet to see how bad your horse's worms are, what kind of worms they have, because they could tell you what kind of dewormer works best. So there's like Safeguard, ivermectin. It's usually like these kinds, the little syringes. So these are the prices, like 13 bucks, 12 bucks, 4 bucks. It's not too expensive. It just depends on the kind that you get. And you usually only have to do it like every 6 months. Yeah, so that's deworming. So those are the yearly fees. Now we're gonna move on to like miscellaneous things like fly spray or supplements. I put them as miscellaneous because the prices vary. You can buy an expensive fly spray or a cheaper fly spray, or you can make your own fly spray at home. It truly just depends. There's fly sprays for like $9. There's fly sprays for like $20. It just depends. Like these are just little things you'll need. Fly spray, detangler, shampoos, like all that stuff. The prices are all different. Depends on the brands, depends on what they're for. So these are just miscellaneous things. Now the next expense would be supplements. To be honest, I don't think supplements are crucial to a horse's health. I mean, it depends unless your vet specifically tells you your horse needs a supplement for their hooves. If your vet says so, then yeah. Usually horses don't need a supplement unless they're deficient in a certain area, and then your vet could tell you that. A lot of people choose to use supplements for their coat to make it more shiny, if they want their manes and tails to grow. I don't know, there's supplements for everything. Now the prices for supplements vary, but it's all like what you want and what you see that your horse needs. It's up to you if you decide you want to, or if your vet says, hey, your horse needs this or this or this, then again you just go to your local feed store or go online. Or if your farrier recommends a specific supplement too, your farrier notices he needs something, then he'll let you know what brand. Or if you're a performance rider and your horse is worked all the time, they're going to shows and they're being jumped and barrel raced and they do reining or cutting, then you might want a joint supplement. Again, like it's up to you and your horse and what you're doing at that time and if it's going to help your horse. I'm going to go back to the medical part. If you're looking to buy a horse, you should definitely start saving for an emergency. Like start putting money into an emergency fund because horses get hurt a lot. They are prone to accidents. So many things can happen. So in case of an emergency, you want to make sure that you have enough to care for your horse. The most common thing is your horse colics. Usually for the vet to come over, it would be like $400 or $450 for them to fill them with oil, stuff like that. The vet comes over to your place. Now if your horse is doing really bad and he needs colic surgery, the estimate for the colic surgery is about $10,000. I'm not too sure if it's the same everywhere else, but that's kind of like a rough estimate. And I think you have to put like $3,000 down, and then I think you can pay off the rest. So those are some of the expenses you have to keep in mind in case of an emergency. You never know. Like horses are crazy accident prone, you know, like they can pull a tendon, they can go lame, cut themselves open. Like you guys don't understand the crazy things that happen to horses. So making sure you have an emergency fund just in case, you know, just to be on the safe side. Another thing also is horse insurance. There are actually companies out there that insure your horse. To be honest, I'm not too familiar with that, but just so you guys know, that does exist if you want to insure your horse. If there's an emergency, if your horse gets injured, I think they pay part of the emergency costs, like surgeries or anything like that, or they pay all of it depending on your insurance plan. If your horse passes away, I think they do reimburse you for the cost of the horse or for a part of the cost of the horse. I mean, I'm not too familiar with any of that, but that is something you can look into if you want to do that to protect your horse and just to have a backup plan. You can. It does exist. There's insurance companies for horses. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is the one-time expenses. That's like your tack, your saddle, your bridles, your halters, your buckets, all that stuff. That is all personal preference. I mean, saddles can go for like $2,000. You can find a saddle for $500. It just ranges. You can buy a used one. You can buy a new one. You can buy like cheap halters. You can buy cheap bridles. Again, that's all up to you. So I'm not going to give you too much info on the prices because again, you should just go online and look. I'm not going to say it again. I promise this is the last time I'm going to mention it, but Facebook, go on Facebook, used horse tack groups, tack swap groups, rail racing tack swap, buy stuff from there. So cheap. People literally like trade things. You don't always have to buy things brand new. You can find stuff used, you know. That's something I actually do a lot, and I used to hang out on there all the time just looking for like tack, rail racing Racing Tax Swap, and you can see here there's 72,549 members. So that means this is a good group. There's a lot of people selling things on here. And sometimes you can type like in search of, and people will usually write like, I have $100 to spend, show me what you got, and then people will post, oh, I'm selling this, I'm selling this, I'm selling this. You see they have like the pictures and all that stuff. You can find so many used things on Facebook. So these are usually like one-time purchases. They're not monthly, and it just depends again on what you want. If you want like a nice tax set, it's gonna be a little bit more expensive. If you want a brand new saddle, it's gonna be a little bit more expensive, but like it just depends on what you want. But this is a great option too if you're looking for used things. Now the last one-time fee is optional. It's a horse trailer. Now a horse trailer, if you're buying a horse, is extremely useful. At first, a horse trailer is a huge expense, but you can find used ones. I've seen some that go for like $1,600, $2,000, $8,000, depending again on what you're looking for. But again, used trailers on Facebook, you can find them. You just gotta search. They're not always pretty looking, but if they work, if they're safe, then you can go ahead and buy a horse trailer. And now if you don't have a horse trailer, there are a lot of people who haul horses for you. Like if you're going to a different state, if you're going to a show, you can always call a horse hauler, and there's groups for that too. There's actually a Facebook group called Hitch Your Horse a Ride. This is for like if you just bought a horse and you want to bring him from a different state, you don't have a horse trailer, or sometimes even if you just want to go somewhere locally for the day, if you want to go on a trail ride, sometimes people will drop you off, pick you up, or if an emergency, they tell you, oh, I'm traveling to this place, or you can write, I need a ride from blank to blank. So this is another great way to find haulers if you don't have a horse trailer. And usually for the horse haulers, it depends, but what I usually see is like $1 a mile is what they'll charge. But again, it depends on how far they're going, it depends on the hauler, it depends on what they're driving. Alright guys, I think that's it. Hopefully I didn't forget anything, and this gives you a little bit of insight on how much it would cost to own a horse. This is the first step before you buy a horse, is finding out how much it's going to cost. Once you have all that figured out, once you called around, you called your feed stores, you called your boarding facilities, you've called all these places to get all your estimates, then you can make the decision on the horse. The actual horse is usually the cheapest part of buying a horse. Actually taking care of the horse and maintaining the horse is the expensive part, and it's a big responsibility. So yeah, I hope I gave you some helpful tips if you didn't know where to start to look for these things. I'm going to be going step by step through the whole process, so I hope you're excited for the next video. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. If you have any tips for anyone else, you could totally help each other out in the comments. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!